monitor the situation in Sudan and bring that to you here on NewsX World. Now time, though, to head to Europe, and in a significant diplomatic move. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has announced that Kyiv has formally extended an offer to Moscow for a new round of peace talks to take place next week. Speaking during his nightly address, the Ukrainian president emphasised the urgent need for a ceasefire, calling for negotiations to take place once again in Istanbul. This would be the third round of talks between the two nations in the past few months. While earlier discussions led to prisoner exchanges, no significant progress has been made towards ending the war, which is now in its fourth year. The latest proposal comes from Rustem Umerov, Ukraine's newly appointed head of the National Security and Defence Council. Well, with us to discuss this latest development in a war that has, of course, gripped parts of Europe and has raised questions across the world, Professor Veselin Popovsky, Professor and Vice Dean of the Jindal Global Law School, who is joining us live from Bulgaria. Professor Popovsky, as always, thank you for taking the time. Do you think that Russia will agree to these ceasefire talks?
I hope so. We all hope so, because this is the time when we need to remind to Russia that it's already 6 months since January, when Donald Trump is in power, and he demanded ceasefire. Not less than Donald Trump asked Russia to agree on an unconditional 30-day ceasefire back then in January. Russia continues to bomb cities, to kill civilians almost daily. And this is definitely the time to ask Russia for its accountability, why it doesn't negotiate, why it doesn't meet the Ukrainian. Zelensky was very direct. He said, I can do everything. I can meet face to face with the Russian president. I have no worry to talk about anything Russians want to talk about, and reach that ceasefire. It comes also in a better timing, let's say, for Ukrainians, because we have Donald Trump ultimatum to Putin after meeting with the NATO Director General Rutte. Trump announced a 50 days ultimatum for Russia to agree on a ceasefire. But also, it comes after United States agree with NATO to sell a lot of munitions, including Patriots air defense systems, and this will be supplied to Ukraine. So this massive new military support for Ukraine, including the package which the European Union imposes on Russia, comes to the point because the previous two negotiations failed, apart from some prisoners exchange, which is very normal. They don't need negotiations to exchange prisoners of war. This could be done by the generals on the battlefield. But now it's time for a serious negotiations as to end the fire and to move to a longer-term peace deal.
Professor Popovsky, let's look at if these talks do go ahead. Of course, previously, Ukraine questioned Russia's delegation that was sent. Do you think a potential US delegation could be involved in some capacity? And how would that potential mediation influence talks, given the fact that Trump has given this 50-day ultimatum?
I hope so. Again, we have a change in the head of the delegation on Ukrainian side. You mentioned the former defense minister, Umerov, who will lead the delegation, a general, but also Keith Kellogg, a general, now visited Kyiv for 6 days, and he was very well informed about the Russian strikes, the civilian casualties. And coming back from Kyiv, obviously, Keith Kellogg informed the US administration. So we have much more clarity now, and we hope that United States administration also has this clarity after Keith Kellogg's visit to Kyiv. We don't see Steve Witkoff anymore going to Moscow, by the way. That's useless US businessman who was going to Moscow in the beginning and deliver nothing, zero impact on the negotiations. So the seriousness of the United States administration to see some progress here is there. And obviously, Ukrainians also have a stronger voice in Istanbul next week. Well, we need still to see what Russia will respond. Hopefully, Russia will send a delegation because Russia also wants to be seen as constructive, at least, in talks. They don't want to seize the relationship with the US administration. They consider Donald Trump still to be kind of their friend in this. So the hopes are there will be negotiations in Istanbul. We don't know when exactly, but let's keep our fingers crossed and hope that this negotiation will go beyond just prisoners exchange.
Yes, and Professor Popovsky, we have around a minute or so left. If Russia says no to these talks, or if the talks take place and no further progress is made, what comes next? Trump's given his ultimatum. We wait to see whether that actually amounts to any sanctions. But if Russia does want to continue this war, as some experts believe, this could all be futile.
It's possible, and you're absolutely correct. Russia has not been very constructive in previous negotiations. So what comes next is more sanctions on Russia and more support for Ukraine. There is no other way out of this conflict unless many more countries support Ukraine, including with military ammunition, and more countries sanction Russia, stopping buying Russian oil and gas. And this is a very clear message for countries that continue, unfortunately, to buy Russian petroleum and gas, which basically gives Putin. Putin has no other revenue apart from selling oil and gas to the world. And if countries impose sanctions on Russia, and many did, but some big exporters still are there.
Yes, absolutely. Professor Veselin Popovsky, thank you ever so much for joining us. We will, of course, here on NewsX World, bring you all